This is CUNY TV, the City University of New York.
Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Eldridge & Company. It's impossible these days for young people who don't go to college to hope for big city living. But the famous private colleges cost more than $40,000 a year, and that can certainly cause despair. However, the public college education, perhaps the best in the world, costs a little under $5,000 a year. Jennifer Raab is the president of Hunter College and a leader in urban public education. She has the heavy responsibility of making young people's dreams come true, and she's my guest. Hello.
Hi, Ronnie.
How many young people do you have? Or I shouldn't say young, because I'm sure not everybody is so young at
That's
Hunter
right.
College.
We have 23,000 students at Hunter College, and that's in 5 different schools. Some are undergraduate and some are graduate. So there's really nothing we don't teach, and the range of ages can be right out of high school to recently we graduated somebody with their first degree at 80 years old.
Oh, isn't
a
that
wonderful
exciting?
thing.
Yeah, she.
It's actually a he.
Oh.
We have men coming back, and I'd actually urge your audience, if you're over 65 in New York City, you're entitled to come to CUNY for free to audit classes. So we have a wonderful senior citizen program as well.
Oh, that's terrific. And then how many people on the faculty?
We have about over 600 full-time faculty and then many, many part-time faculties working with our students.
Right. And you not only have one campus anymore.
We haven't had one campus in a long time. So 68th Street, where everybody knows us really as a subway stop, is our main campus. On 25th Street in the East River is our nursing campus. And we just had a wonderfully exciting ribbon cutting. We moved our School of Social Work, which many people knew was on 79th Street, in a wonderful real estate swap. We built a new campus on 119th Street and 3rd Avenue. And that building has social work and our new CUNY School of Public Health. So what an amazing thing to have social work and public health working together in a building in a neighborhood that desperately needs the help.
What a difference from 79th Street.
And that was one of the visions, was that we would come into a neighborhood and really work with the neighborhood. And we've made a pact with the neighborhood that we are there to work on their problems. And we want to see in another decade a healthier and a more vital East Harlem. So we are at work with all their social service agencies, with their health agencies, with their schools. And this is a real partnership.
Well, that's such a fabulous difference, because you've got that whole field available to you. It's wonderful, and they have you.
It's wonderful, and one of the great challenges I think in academia is that there's so much incredible knowledge and training going on, but often people don't speak to each other. So in the School of Social Work, we can be training people to work with people who have AIDS, and in the School of Public Health, we can be addressing the same population. Now people are going to be required sort of to meet together on the stairs, and they'll be in the same building, and we really hope to break down those silos so we can address the pressing social needs.
But you know, the other thing is, I've always thought academics operated here, and the real world was on a different level.
Hunter's
and
always
situating it. Well, Hunter's in the middle of everything, so I guess that's an advantage.
And I think one of the goals of Hunter's always been with our professional schools. Remember, we started as a place to train teachers.
Yeah.
We train nurses, we train public health workers and social workers, and our goal has always been to create practical solutions. So in addition to training an incredibly talented workforce, we are always been on the ground. What are the real problems, and how can great minds find solutions? So we never wanted to be an ivory tower, and we never have.
Yeah. You also have some other locations. You've got some galleries.
And we have on the West 40s, we have a wonderful art program. It's highly sought after because you get your own studio. So we have students from around the world coming, and we're hoping to move that to a new facility in Tribeca in the next year or so. So that's been very, very exciting. about a year ago, we opened the former home of Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt, and that is our Public Policy Institute. And many people remember reading about the house that Sarah, Franklin's mother, gave to them as a wedding present, and there was only one stipulation. She kept half of it for herself.
And she lived there.
Right, we called that the first New Deal. But the house became very important in history because in 1921, when Roosevelt gets polio, the house has an elevator, which was somewhat unusual in that time. So they moved back, and because he could navigate himself around the house, Louis Howe moves in, sort of pushes Eleanor out of the bedroom, and they plan Roosevelt's comeback. So this is where he lived when he ran for governor of New York State, and this is where he planned the presidential race. So it was on those stairs on November 8th, 1932, that Sarah Roosevelt sat waiting for Franklin to come home from the Biltmore Hotel as President of the United States. And she says, "This is the happiest day of my life."
Oh. And it also fits in with a tradition, doesn't it, of Hunter College? Since Hunter started, I guess it started as a high school for girls, did it?
It started as what we called a normal school.
Yeah.
And
what does that mean?
So that was a school that was created to train women to become teachers. And we like to remind our students that there really was a Thomas Hunter, and he was a true visionary. He was asked to leave Ireland in the 1850s because of his political views, a man well ahead of his time. He came here and became active in New York City education, and then he began to focus on the issue of teaching and the fact that he didn't believe 8th grade girls should just leave 8th grade and then come back the next year in the front of the class, that they really deserved training as teachers. And at that period in our history, in the 1870s, in the United States, we were opening what we called normal schools, which was a place to train women to become teachers. But he had a big vision. He required...
That didn't include then any college.
No, it was a sort of a college and sort of a high school.
Yeah.
It was that teenage year, but we considered it higher learning because at that point, there were very few opportunities for women in the United States, and we were actually the 9th institution in the United States to provide higher learning opportunities for women. And what was so special about Thomas Hunter is he believed not only that a woman should have a year of training as a teacher in pedagogical methods, but he believed they should have 2 years of content learning. So you should really know your stuff. And then very interestingly, he said, quote, like a doctor, they should have a clinical experience. So he started a model school. And now, hundreds of years later, we still have Hunter Elementary as part of Hunter College, because that was Thomas Hunter's vision that teachers should train in their own model school.
He also, though, wanted to have a diverse student body.
He was so ahead of his time.
Yeah.
So ahead of his time. It was an amazing thing. He wrote, and it sounds somewhat old-fashioned now, but he has this great line in his autobiography that the Negro should sit next to the Jew, should sit next to the Gentile. And the only one that Thomas Hunter felt we could discriminate against were men. So in 1964, when we finally opened our doors to men in our downtown campus on 68th Street, the Bronx campus had always been co-ed. Yeah. The men arrived, and the women were wearing big buttons that said, "Ban the boys."
But that was the tradition that Hunter came out of.
That's right, and we were always that place. And in 1906, we became a BA granting institution, and as you know, this was the place that if you were a smart woman, this is where you went to college. Yeah. And sometimes you absolutely had no resources, it was free, and you barely had the 5 cents to get on the subway. But even women of means, often their fathers were not going to either let them go away to school, or they were not going to invest in a college education. So we have a lot of women whose fathers would send the sons to college, but they would not pay for their daughters. So we were a place for both rich and poor women, and we truly believed that they should have a college education and that they should have careers. So we were early in training women doctors and lawyers. One of my favorite, the class of 1942, Bella Abzug put out the Political Journal, and Judith Crist, who basically invented the idea of movie reviews, put out the Literary Journal. And that was on one floor in our building.
So great, in one class, right? It's terrific.
Yeah.
So now it's totally men and women, totally integrated, though.
It's totally integrated, but it's an interesting fact for us, but it's really an interesting fact for higher education throughout the country. Women predominate in higher education now. I mean, our freshman class is 68% women. In the nation, it's close to 60% of all college students are women, and in the next few years it will exceed 60%. So this is actually almost ironic that now as a man you almost have a better chance of getting into some of the selective colleges because they need men.
Even as a white man.
And it's one of those things where things have changed so much. But
what explains the change? Is it
a lot of it is
recruiting into the armed forces?
I know. We really believe, particularly in New York City, it's the tragedy of what happens to our minority men, and that our minority men, our Black and Hispanic men, are not graduating from high school, and that is something we have to address. At CUNY, we have a new initiative called the Black Male Initiative, and at Hunter, we are really focusing on very high-achieving African-American men and making sure they graduate, because that's one of the struggles that we really face at Hunter and throughout the CUNY system. Most of our students are working, they're commuting, and we as a school have to invest in making sure they know the most important thing they're doing with all the other things in their life is to get that degree. So with some of these initiatives, particularly for the minority men, we are absolutely focused in helping them complete and get the BA.
So that means do you go into high schools?
We're very active in recruiting, and one of the things that we like to do at Hunter is really look at, we have so many things that we teach, and we try to match who we're recruiting. So for example, and as somebody who graduated in the High School of Music and Art, as you did,
Me.
you would understand that how many talented youngsters there are in New York City in the arts. So we have a new program now called the Muse Scholars, where we give a full scholarship and a $1,000 stipend for students who are interested broadly in the arts, so music and poetry and dance and the studio arts. And we want them to understand that there's a wonderful, affordable option for them. Because artists have amazing careers, but they're rarely the people who make a lot of money.
Right.
So for them to be able to have an affordable, high-quality arts degree
background,
in the capital of the arts. I mean, this is New York City, where we can take them to dance, we can take them to jazz. So we're really focusing on various areas. We have amazing science departments, and we have so many young people who think about science, but we need to get them into those tracks, because this country has a crisis, as you know, in training people in the hard sciences.
You have a genome program, don't you? A research center?
Right, we have, and its focus is that actually particularly focuses on minority scientists, minority faculty members who have committed to the sciences. And we have a world record in sending minority students, both male and female, on to get PhDs. So we are very, very proud. Is actually we now have scientists. We have 2 of the top African-American scientists at Duke University are Hunter graduates, and I keep trying to recruit them back, but I can't afford them, but I guess that's a wonderful thing. And we're very, very proud of that record, and because we have so many minority faculty, we have a biology department that's a third minority and a third women. So we have role models. You can come to Hunter and see yourself in our faculty, and you know you can succeed.
Just one thing to go back to the mentoring or something for the kids to get them to go to college. Don't you have to get them early in high school to give them the incentive to continue? How does that happen?
It's an incentive. It's also that sense that they can succeed. So we have a few programs that we're very, very involved in. One is the College Now program, where any student that has the capacity in the New York City public school can take a free college class. And we really recruit in the high schools, because a lot of students will take AP classes, and then the colleges won't necessarily accept them for credit. But if you come as a student and take Intro to Art History or Intro to Biology, and you pass that, you will have credits from Hunter College. The other initiative that we started about 6 years ago that we're extremely excited about is that we started a whole new high school, and it's called Manhattan Hunter Science High School. It's on 65th and Amsterdam in the old Martin Luther King complex. And it's for students who, first of all, are committed to trying to go to college, and we have a very strong college going rate. About 90% of the students go to college, and we have a 98% graduation rate. And our goal is to get as many of them to come to Hunter College.
That's great.
So they spend their senior year, almost 90% of them spend their senior year on the Hunter campus. So they take 2 college classes and 2 high school classes, and they mix in with the college students, and we're sending them the message. You have Hunter College in the name of your school. You're going to come to Hunter College. If you're accepted at Hunter College, we're going to give you a full scholarship. One of our donors pays for this, and it's the message is you can make it. And I agree with you. You have to start early, and you have to send that message that you can succeed, and somebody believes in you.
Yeah, that supportive feeling that you're part of something. So let's talk about money. You said if you could afford these professors. Is your pay scale in line with other with private colleges?
Private colleges, just like almost anything else in the private sector, have more resources and they can recruit. But what's wonderful is we, first of all, at Hunter and in the CUNY system in general, we have been raising more and more private money. And we're very, very proud of that. We've brought so many of our successful alums back, and they've been very generous.
So when you raise the money, you keep it?
When I raise the money, we keep it, and we go out and recruit. So we have named chairs and named professorships, and we've been able to match many of the offers now because people also, people love to teach in New York, and frankly, people love to teach the Hunter student because these are students who are so engrossed, they're so committed. As I said, they often have to work, and they know the value of their education. So there's a certain joy that our faculty gets out of really, working with this student body.
And so you don't have some of the same problems that they must have on big residential campuses that are far away.
There's always, a lot of the students, I said, they're very, very centered group of students. They know the value of the education they're receiving because they have to work hard to get it. We do have a small dorm down on our 25th Street campus, and we use that to really try to create that residential feel and really have students focus on being in college. And we try to do other things to deal with the fact that we're not that classic campus with the Gothic, square in front of it. And we have a lot of programs where we'll sponsor. So if you're a faculty member and you're teaching a play, and there's an off-Broadway production of the play, we will buy the two students tickets and support a pizza lunch after so that students have that kind of typical college experience of spending time outside the classroom with faculty members.
You're increasingly famous for your film and arts programs, aren't you? I mean, I've seen lots of people who were filmmakers who went to Hunter.
Filmmaking, art,
it's no longer just
dance,
NYU,
music, absolutely. And we're very excited right now. We have a new initiative funded by the Mellon Foundation called Arts Across the Curriculum. And the idea is first to get all the arts people talking to each other. And then to think about how does art infuse other disciplines. So we have one of, Patty Cisneros just helped us recruit through a wonderful gift, a Latin American art specialist. And that person is going to work with our history department. So if students are learning about Latin American history, let them see the whole deeper culture. We were really excited as part of this initiative. We had Patty Smith come and first do a gallery exhibit in our gallery. She did a beautiful number of works of art after 9/11. And last week she gave a concert and she read her poetry. So what's more interdisciplinary and cross-curriculum, art, poetry, and music, and all of our students in those various disciplines were there. So we're trying to really make people break down those lines and really
So you have to do it with a social work school too, because there's so many people in this city grow up with no beauty around them.
I think, it's a
just
wonderful,
one of my pet peeves.
I couldn't agree with you more, and therefore I'm going to extend you an invitation, because one of the things that we also put in our new building is our central archives. And I do hope people out there interested in Puerto Rican history will come visit. We have the largest in the world collection of archives of Puerto Rican diaspora. And we asked Susana Laval, who's the former director of Museo del Barrio, to curate an exhibit for the opening of the school. And it's a magnificent exhibit with work by Antonio Martorell, who's one of the prominent Puerto Rican artists, called Labor, and it's all art based on Puerto Ricans who came up in the 50s and 60s and had a vision of sort of, golden streets and wonderful opportunity, and really wound up working incredibly hard. So I couldn't agree with you more, and one of the reasons that we planned the school is to bring beauty into a neighborhood. It's a wonderful new building, and we've really opened it for community activity.
Just quickly, did you make money on the sale when you sold the social work school on 79th Street? You owned it?
We actually, a foundation, it was a wonderful story. A philanthropist built us that building, and he let us use it, but he actually never gave it to us. So a foundation owned it recently after he passed away, and we approached the foundation, and I asked them if they would sell the building and give us a share of the money to be able to build in East Harlem, and they agreed.
Great.
And then a private developer actually built us the building, so it was done extremely quickly. It's a beautiful piece of architecture, and he will now be able to have the site on 79th Street. So it was actually one real estate deal of the year for the broker. So it was a very creative solution. And we're trying to do more of that at CUNY now with public-private partnerships, because we know we need to interact, with all groups to really make great products.
So you're a very strong woman, and I think that it nurtures that continuous tradition of Hunter, of strong women.
There's a great expression.
And you have a lot of programs that reflect that.
There's a great expression, I think came out in the 40s, and I think you think of women like Bella Abzug. You could always tell a Hunter girl, but you can't tell her much.
That's great.
So I think, and we do like that with our men and our women. I mean, we really do want to build a strong student.
I mean, they're really involved, and they're involved in their communities, and they're.
We really try to send that message, because I think a 21st century education is a global citizen and an engaged citizen. And the Hunter motto is mihi cura futuri, the care of the future is mine. And we tell the students that at freshman orientation. And I say it at graduation, this is a publicly supported school. The public is investing in your education, and you have now an obligation to give back. And you can do that in many ways. If you become a doctor, find some time to volunteer in a hospital. If you become an artist, do some socially, oriented art. But find some way in your own talent to pay back, because you have been given a lot. And we always express that message.
So what's going on in Roosevelt House?
Roosevelt House is now our Public Policy Institute, and one of the great things, again, is really a tradition. So Roosevelt wins in 1932 in November, but at that time, if you remember, the inauguration wasn't until March. So for those next few months, all of the New Deal was really hatched there. And one of my favorite stories is that Eleanor said to Franklin, you should really have a woman cabinet secretary. It had never been done. So Franklin invites Frances Perkins, and she writes about coming to the House, and he brings her in, and he says, I want you to be Secretary of Labor. And she said, and I want to create a program that becomes Social Security. And they make this deal. And we tell that to our students, that happened in this House. So you're studying now public policy and human rights in our new programs there. We have faculty doing research and training our students to think about proactively about government and social justice. And we have wonderful programs for the students and for the public. So we've had the Dalai Lama, we've had Ban Ki-moon, we had Secretary Arnie Duncan of Education, Secretary Sean Donovan from the Housing Department, and all of this to inspire the students to see what they can do to be engaged in government. So it's just a really enormous hub of activity, and we do hope all the public will look on our website and come to our programs, because they're open to the public, and we really want people to engage in thinking about public policy.
And what's the website?
It's www.hunter.cuny.edu, and go onto our Roosevelt site. And please visit us, because and so many New Yorkers, as I said, remember that story. Right. And now we're opening the house. And what's wonderful is that our young students act as docents. So we train them, and they give tours on certain days for students for other people to see what the history of the house is.
I met Mrs. Roosevelt several times, especially when I was in junior high school. I mean, I think people by now talk about it all the time. I had the most wonderful civics teacher, which they don't teach in high school anymore. And I think that's terrible. I think we need civics in grade school. But anyway, and he started something called Youth Builders, which was part of a group that she was a founder of. And she would come and talk to us, or we met her at different places.
We hear those wonderful stories, and that was an amazing thing, even after they left the White House. She came back, and it was really her vision. She and Franklin, when Sarah died in 1941, they said Hunter should buy this house. So they arranged for us to buy it. We made the best real estate deal of the world, $50,000 for this wonderful double brownstone. And they gave the first $1,000, and they envisioned it as an interfaith center. So it was always part of our world. And even when she came back in the 50s, she was involved with the UN, as you know. She was actually up on our Bronx campus, is where she drafted the first Declaration of Universal Human Rights. So she always had that wonderful mentoring quality, and so many of our students remember her.
I loved her because she had this high voice, and it always had a little tremble in it. And I used to, when you worry about making speeches, you don't worry, do you? You don't get nervous.
I'm just used to it.
But she was always an inspiration, because she had this hat on, and her gloves and everything, and this high voice, and I would think, well, she must have been nervous, so it's all right to be nervous, you know, but just
Eleanor
plow
was.
ahead.
Right.
I don't know if she couldn't have been nervous all the time, that's for sure.
But she really did become the model for the active political woman.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really incredible. So Hunter has had that great tradition, and it continues, doesn't it? You just recently had a conference of women and Anita Hill.
It was an amazing thing. 20 years ago, right after the Anita Hill, Clarence Thomas hearings, Anita Hill was invited to Hunter College, and Bella Abzug spoke, and it was a time where many people called it the revival of feminism, because what had happened during those hearings really invigorated people to come back to the movement. So 20 years later, we had Anita Hill again on that stage. And it was so interesting to have our young people there, because for some of them, the question is really, what are you all talking about? Are these things really problems anymore? So that's a very interesting perspective. So we know we've come a long way, but we also know we have a long way to go. So that was very interesting to have this, you know, people who had lived through it, and then have the next generation reflecting about where are we on that spectrum.
And it's especially also interesting because it's all changed. I mean, so many people said, oh, who's Anita Hill, you know, and everything. But now I think increasingly people must believe it by now.
But I think that's what
Clarence.
It was wonderful to see the students. They had to learn it. Like, that's right, who was she and what happened? And there's certain things I think we all believe, that many of the women said at the conference, that it happened in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. It really wouldn't happen again.
Now.
But that doesn't mean they're not subtle ways that people discriminate and send the wrong messages. And we want our young women to know the difference and really be able to understand it.
And it also instills confidence in them.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it was a great feeling in there, and it was such a great, there were people, you know, in their 80s and people that were 18 and coming together really to discuss these issues.
You also have a Bella Abzug Institute of Leadership, right?
Well, where else should it be? You know, Liz Abzug, one of Bella's daughters, is as great a leader as her mom. And we work with her to inspire high school students to really know what Bella did and what other women did, and to become leaders, and we hope also to come to college.
Yeah. Well, we've come to the end of this program, so I wish I was young and I would, although I could come and order some classes.
As you said, art, political science, and maybe you'll even come teach something for us.
Thank you. And thanks so much. If there are any people you'd like to hear and topics you'd like us to explore, please let me know. You can write to me at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or you can go to the website at cuny.tv and click on Contact Us. I look forward to hearing from you.